All right, we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. If we could all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, roll call, please.
Mrs. Bloom?
Yes.
Ms.
Right here.
Lehman?
Here.
Ms. Lewis?
Here.
Mr. Nally?
Here.
Mr. Price?
Here. Can I get a motion to approve our minutes from the regular meeting held June 10th, 2024, please?
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Lewis. Second. Second by Mr. Nally. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. Nally?
Yes.
Mrs. Bloom?
Yes.
Ms. Lehman?
Yes.
Mr. Price?
Yes, motion's approved. Moving on to legislative report.
The only comment I have is with the voucher system, just, please continue to educate yourselves, go to OSBA, that equity and adequacy, there's a number of resources. Please continue to educate, because I think, again, it's something that's going to hit us hard in the future, and we just need, as a board, to be on top of it. And that's all I had tonight.
Thank you. One walk-on item
Yes, sir.
tonight under resignation.
Yep, we have a resignation. Carrie Wallach is resigning.
So we'll have a couple number changes as we
Correct.
get to that point in the
Should
agenda.
be number 8. That's right.
Moving on to community, there's no one present to address the board. So we'll move on to superintendent's report.
All right, very good. I'm going to let Miss Abby take the show here. It's a work session, and we've had planned for a while a report on our special ed report. So Miss Abernathy, if you wouldn't mind taking over.
Sure. It's my last time to present this information, so.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, you get to present other stuff, though, as assistant superintendent. You didn't lose any responsibilities.
That's okay.
All right. So every year we get our special education profile and rating. One comes in the winter, one comes usually around May. And these documents will give us the information about how our students who qualify for special education services, how they're doing academically, and then also how we're doing compliance-wise, because, there's a great deal of compliance. So these documents tell us 6 things. Our children with disabilities entering kindergarten ready to learn. Our children with disabilities achieving at high levels. To what extent do students with disabilities have access to the general education environment? Number 4, are youth with disabilities prepared for work and post-secondary education? Here we go. Does the district implement IDEA, which is our federal law for special education, to improve services for the results of students with disabilities, and then our children receiving equitable services and supports? So these 6 questions are answered in about 50 pages of documents.
Imagine that.
So looking at this first slide, this is a comparison of the state of Ohio and the average amount of students or percentage of students who qualify under different categories, and then compared to our data. Right now, we're
Miss Abby,
within...
I'm sorry. Do they have paper?
No, I
Okay.
apologize.
I see a couple of you looking. I think what she's talking about now is only
Yep.
here.
Okay.
My apologies.
So that's
Sorry.
okay.
So this is our percentage compared to the state of Ohio. And in the 8 years I've been here, this is the closest that we've been. We're about 0.5% off. We've never really been too far off, though. I would say no more than 2 to 3%. We've been lower than the state average, but we're closing that. Different areas. These are the main areas of students or main areas of qualification. There are 14, but these are the main areas, like I said. There is one you'll notice under developmental delay that it's an NR, meaning not rated. That just means that we have a pretty small percentage, and it's not triggering the report to give us a percentage. However, I'm only pointing that out because that area, the law changed last year, and we're able to keep students qualified under that qualification up until their 10th birthday. Before, it had to be before they came into school-age services. It only could be a preschool. So I'm just pointing that out because I think over the next few years, you're going to start to see that percentage grow, rightly so. Another area I wanted to point out is our speech language impairment. we are, in the 8 years I've been here, and even in the years prior, we are always very different for that. So the Fremont City Schools, 20 out of the students who qualify, 27% are speech language impairment. The state average is a little bit less than 12. My first few years, I really kept a close eye on that because it is such a discrepancy. And typically our DD, or developmental delay number, we're not really in comparison either. I think, though, with this new law, you're going to start to see that shift a little bit more. That has been, though, like the same. Like we've seen that discrepancy for the last 10 years here. So because it's becoming a pattern, we're really kind of taking a look at it, but I'm also not panicking over it. I think our students are qualified in the right areas. They're getting the services that they need, no matter what area that they're qualified under. So that's just one to watch.
What does speech and language entail?
Okay, a whole lot. It used to be a lot of students with articulation, like they're, messing up their L's and K's or can't say their B's or D's, right? Now we're seeing expressive and receptive languages deficits. So you're seeing deficits in being able to understand what's being said to you, and then also trying to formalize language to give you answers or responses. And we're seeing a huge increase in that. We've had to increase our speech language pathologists by 3 since I've been here. The state has a calculator, of how usually it's around 80 kids on a caseload. And I really say that number with, not great, because that's a lot of kids to service. So they created this calculator so that everything's a little bit more even. So if you're working with students, preschool, or students who are higher need, who have multiple areas, then it counts for more than just one student. So that's what that entails.
So have the indicators within the indicator changed at all? Like you just described the difference in what you're seeing. Is that because they qualify differently, or is that just because of the times and things and evolution and
I think a little bit of,
and
without being a scientist here, I would say I agree with all of that. I think it's a perfect combination of a lot when it comes to that.
Thank you.
Yep.
Abby, too, I would guess that 27% are also identified in another way, right? So these numbers would represent, so one child could be in 3 of categories, right?
You only have one category, but you might have areas of need. So,
Okay.
For example, we do have a few students who their speech language impairment is definitely their highest area of need, but they may have a reading goal on their IEP as well, or maybe even a behavioral goal. But that area that they really have the highest need in would be in that area. Okay. You'll see that a little bit too with other health impairment minor. A lot of students with some diagnoses may qualify for that. ADHD is one of them, but you may also see like they have a math goal as well, not just executive functioning skills. Make sense?
Do you think that number for the speech language will increase statewide also?
It has over the last few years.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I just from my wife's perspective, she's found that because, and we like to blame it all the time, but once COVID hit, that expressive, how to reply, is missing in a lot of kids. And it seems like it's more, they're almost more of an introvert more than being able to communicate and conversate, I guess would be it just seems like she sees that more and more just in the 2nd grade. But
and she's, I think all of our elementary teachers and preschool teachers, I think we're going to continue to see an influx for a little bit, and I'm hoping it'll plateau because children typically learn language by having it be modeled to them, and it could be very well modeled in the home. But I learned language at preschool and with playing with my cousins and playing with the neighbors. Times have changed to where kids have less exposure to language outside of their home
makes
as well.
sense. Yeah, makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Any questions on that? Next part is our special ed rating. So this comes out, and this is the winter months, and it's based on a couple different compliance indicators, which we're going to go over in a minute. Don't worry. This is reported to the districts in the winter, and if there's any sort of corrective action that needs to be done, if we're not meeting indicators appropriately, this is where we will have those. We've not had a corrective action plan On our special ed rating, I think I've done 2 corrective action plans, one when I came here over some discipline, and then also over a compliance date for an evaluation about 4 years ago. And we had a family move out of the district. We didn't get it documented in time. It was very minor. Still not compliant, but that's what we had to do. Yep. I don't like to do those. So our special ed ratings over the last few years, it's always for the year behind. We'll receive 24 data, or the 24 report this winter. Then we'll have our current school year data. It's always a little bit behind. So we're going to go over that in a moment too. Okay. There are some key takeaways. I'm going to go over a little bit though before I go over these key takeaways. They're in your packet I gave you guys. There is an indicators table. So when you get our special ed reports, our profile and our rating, they don't send the indicators in order. They send you like 6, 14, 10, and then they might send, 1 through 8 the next time. But they don't even put them on the report that I shared with you guys that looks like this in order. So I made a table that's totally overwhelming, but I'm going to go over a few things on it with you to kind of help keep it organized. And I'm going to go over some of the biggest things. And then if you guys have questions, we can go from there. Sound good? Okay, so the first part, everything in blue is what I'm going to go over. So the blue font there. So the first thing is going to be our graduation rate. And I have this highlighted because I think it's really important, because you'll hear stories of, oh, that school district only graduated 80% of their kids on IEPs, right? Or this school district only graduated 40%. Well, and then you think, we had all of our kids graduate. We're at 100%. But there are different graduation indicators for all students, right? And even students with disabilities need to meet those. So there are times in the state of Ohio, we only give 1 diploma. Other states give multiple diplomas or maybe certificates of attendance, stuff like that. But in Ohio, you get 1 diploma. It is what it is, right? So some of our kids won't count as graduates if they count based off or if they graduate based off their IEP goals, or if they don't pass state testing. So if you look at our percentage, we are meeting it, but we are in the 60s, in the 60%. I'm fine with that personally, because I feel that, a few different indicators in high school shouldn't, determine a student's, ability to earn a job or get a job and earn an income, right? One good thing I will say is that, we have these different seals for graduation, and it's not all just testing. And I think that's going to help. It's causing a lot of work for some of our staff, like Barb McNutt and our high school staff, but they will tell you it's worth every moment, because it's getting kids in those proper channels, if that makes sense. So then you need to look right below that, just talk about some dropouts. Typically, our students who would be considered dropout would be our 5th-year seniors. So we have students who finish all of their requirements within 4 years of high school, and they still continue on for some extra services. We had a few students do that this year, and we'll have it again next year. But then we'll have students who won't earn all their credits or earn their seals in 4 years. So they stay on a 5th year. That's always a little like a downhill slope for us, because we're not very successful in keeping our kids after they turn 18 in that 5th year. We're not very successful at keeping them. Not for lack of trying. It's just kids get that taste of freedom. If they don't go to school, there's, Mr. Smith and truancy's not chasing them down the street to have them come in, because they're 18 or even 19 years old. So they really work hard to get all the graduation requirements done in the 4 years. And if it's not looking like it's going to happen, then the administration at Ross really, really great about communicating with the student and their family about all the options between us and Vanguard. So I'm hoping to see that number decrease over, to 0, like I think everyone would like to. But that's where we're looking at for our 3-year trend. Okay. So the next part is going to talk about some state testing. There are some at the bottom of this page and the top of the next page. You're going to see that we're not really meeting the mark in our students with disabilities being proficient. You will see some increases over the last 3 years, and you will see a couple of decreases, but that's one area that We've talked about it very frequently between special ed department and the curriculum department. And I think too, with some of the new curriculum that our committees are picking out, they're having a lot more involvement and a lot more resources for our students with some of those curricular components. And so I'm hoping to see this increase as well because of that. Okay. And then if you go to, it'd be the 4th page.
Can I go back to proficiency
Yes, you
testing
can.
just a really quick question? So do our students have to take the proficiencies just as everybody else?
Great question. Yeah. So we have students who, most of our students take the Ohio State test. They are able to be accommodated for at times. So some universal accommodations could be, small group. You can do one-to-one testing, familiar test administrator. Some special education or disability accommodations that we would provide could be maybe read aloud if for ELA if the reading gap is large enough, extended time. And maybe some other manipulatives that we wouldn't be able to give a general ed kid. But for the most part, it's the same test. Sometimes we'll do some paper testing depending on the student, whatever the IEP team or 504 team has, agreed upon for that student. But typically, it's always the same test. And typically, it's given in the same manner.
What kind of strategies are you looking at to get those not met to be met?
I think a lot of
What are you allowed to do? I mean, that's
when it comes to the testing environment, very little. Like we can just kind of, walk around, help, assist. We can give frequent breaks, maybe, some redirection is needed. In our everyday activities, what we're seeing in the classroom is our no new instruction time, the NNI time that, we've talked about. There are some positives to, state mandates. And I think this could be one of them too. So I know in the curriculum department, they created a great NNI program daily to where our kids are, they're given the iReady assessment and other assessments. We're looking at those weaknesses and we're trying to hit those up. And it's given extra time on top of just, the intervention specialist pulling the student to work on that IEP goal. They're also getting instruction on top of that, maybe from a Title I teacher or a general education teacher as well.
So you're saying it's not from lack of resources from the board level, out to make sure that
No, I don't believe
resources
so.
are there.
No, I'm always
How does
willing to
that
hear
compare
input.
then to the state?
I'm sorry, one more time.
How does that compare then to the state? If we're saying, earlier you were showing percents of where we were following.
Yep. So in the boxes that I gave you, so we can just look at this front sheet. So grade 4 reading proficiency rate, and when it says standard, that means the standard Ohio State test, standard test. We were at this current data, then the 3rd box shows that Fremont City Schools was at 14% proficient, and the state one is to be at 24.86%. There are a few boxes you're going to see that we are really, really close. And then there are some that there's a gap. So that's where we're at. And if you look at that 3-year trend for grade 4, the 21-22 data moving over, Fremont City was at 8.7, state was at 21, one is at 21.86%. But then next year we jumped. So those are the numbers that we're seeing some growth. If you look at grade 8 reading proficiency, we've not met it, but we've seen almost a 10% increase over the last 3 years in that.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
And I would say too, Donna, maybe Denise, you could correct me if I'm wrong, but in my time here, I think we have better individual information about children than we've ever had. Would you agree with that? And that's a lot to do with this iReady program that we really are now more faithfully using in the classroom. It's a lot more work not a lot more work. It's more work for teachers and they have to trust the system, but I think we have better information about individuals than we've ever had. And the focus has been, okay, now that we have this information, how do we focus on that child's needs? So I think that's going to be mixed in with this every child, but special ed is for sure. Yeah.
So that's why I try to give like a 3-year trend so you can see some of those numbers, over the 3 years, what things are looking like. All right. Go on then too. So I'm looking at indicator 4. And I'm looking at 4B. And you'll see that we are meeting. So, these indicators are super important in my world. Not that state tests aren't, but this is really what I look for because this is access to a curriculum. This is access, for our students to, be with their peers, be, in the general education classroom. So we're going to look at overall disproportionality, which I'm not very good at saying that word, discipline. And this is making sure that we're not disciplining students who are on IEPs, even within our different socioeconomic groups and our different races that we have here in Fremont, that we are, proportionate with those numbers compared to their same general education peers. And we are meeting that. If you look at by discipline, by race, we are meeting that. Also, that school age least restrictive environment, that is having our students in the general education classroom as much as possible, and we are meeting that. The next part where it says 5B, it talks about restrictive educational environments, and then it talks about separate facilities right under that. And that's something that I think we have definitely grown. We have the right people in place is what we have. When I came here, we had about 11 or 12 kids alternately placed for behavior, and now we're down to 4. I think that's great. I also think it's great that we're transitioning. We transitioned 2 kiddos back to the high school this year. I think that's so important as a former high school teacher because these kids are going to be graduating. And if they're not part of Ross High School, then it's going to be really hard to be incorporated into the community. Or even walk at graduation here and they don't know their peers. Like that is so important. And so our 2 kiddos, we brought a 10th grader back and a 9th grader back this year. And it's great. Like I could go on, but I won't. Okay. And the next part then is preschool. We want to make sure our preschool numbers here, that we have them in the appropriate placement, and we are here. The preschool LRE home, just a little side note for that. We were servicing students in homes, and the Department of Education said that's very restrictive. You need to be bringing them into your preschools or into, your schools and providing the services with peers. So we've really grown in that area as well. And you'll see they measure all sorts of different skills. Are they coming into preschool ready to learn? And are they making growth? And are they prepared for kindergarten? And are they making growth? And all those numbers are below there. And then on the last page, this also talks about disproportionality a little bit more, and it talks about special education. We want to make sure we're not over-identifying students based off their gender, based off their race. And this is something that we take very seriously to make sure we're providing all supports necessary to all of our students, and we are meeting that as well. And then 12 and 13 is transition. So you'll see part early childhood transition, part C to B. And I just wanted to bring that up because we have a really great relationship with our Board of DD and Help Me Grow. And this is our transition from 18 months to 36 months of age into preschool. So we're responsible to have an evaluation and an IEP in place, if appropriate, by that child's 3rd birthday. And you'll see we're meeting that. It is a lot of cooks in the kitchen, I say. We have so many preschools and so many services here in town. And I typically have 2 preschool intervention specialists. And I think all of our SLPs get a little dabble in preschool except one because, we share that wealth. I have 1 school psychologist in preschool, and then OT, PT. And they make it all work and look so easy. And the amount of just effective communication that they have to have is beyond this world, and to see that's really great. And then our secondary transition is transitioning students from school age to the real world, right? And we do different programming. Barb McNutt has a huge role in this, and you'll see we're meeting those compliance standards too. Any questions?
The state testing keep going back to it. And I know you catch my face being pain. It's troublesome that we have children that are on an IEP or some type of plan that have accommodations for the work that they do every day in the classroom, but it doesn't sound like those same accommodations are fully realized when they sit down to take a standardized test. So we talk about even playing fields a lot here on the board, and that's not I know that that's not a us thing, it's not a you thing, it's not a your department thing. It's just kind of if this is one of those things that prevents a kiddo from graduating like with a diploma, that makes my heart hurt a little bit.
And that is, when it comes to graduation seals, I know everyone at Ross is probably just rolling their eyes at me or telling me to be quiet on this, but that is one positive about the seals that, there's ways around that. And then also, like I said, too, that when it comes to, graduation rate, as long as we're staying above that state average, we have kiddos who are, earning a diploma in their own way that their team has developed for them. I'm fine with that as well. So, and the state, the federal government sets rules and then each state has to follow them and then up the ante if they want, right? And one thing is with state.
Right. Right. That part.
And I will say, we had more students taking the alternative assessment, which is a modified assessment. And we have to remain under 1% of all of our tested kiddos, not just all of our enrollment. All of our tested kiddos, we should be under 1% is what the federal government says. We are under 1% using their matrix because we're forced to do that. I think there are times where teams disagree with that matrix, but having to follow it kind of gives everyone an out. And then it's, we're just going to go in and do our best and, hopefully we'll see some growth and get some good measurement.
Sure.
So.
And Miss Lewis, as an old dog, I've watched the whole thing develop. As a sixth grade teacher, back then it was just a ninth grade proficiency, kind of the first rollout of that.
Oh, yeah.
But I remember those conversations along the decades now that I've been involved, is that if you didn't have, unfortunately, there were districts that took advantage of, if a child wasn't on the pathway to graduation, they just, you're on an IEP. And it became an illegitimate pathway to almost get a kid through. So I think that's been that constant conversation. I hear your angst. I really do. But I think on the other side, or at least how it got here, partly was, I think it had been abused some, and they were identifying kids that wouldn't really need to be identified simply to get them across the finish line.
And I appreciate that. Yeah. That other side of the coin as well. I mean,
I remember those conversations literally earlier in my career about.
It's important to know the history.
It became a dumping ground.
Yes.
For
and we want our kids to work hard.
Absolutely.
And achieve
so it's a fine line.
Be proud and.
Yeah, for sure.
But correct me if I'm wrong. It used to be, so the federal government has a certain number of standardized tests that you have to have in place. And then a state can change. They have to at least meet that. But of course, the state of Ohio decides, let's go way above and beyond what the federal guideline is. Is that correct? I mean, I want to say there was 6. I mean, I remember the numbers at one point. The federal was like 17 and we were at like 24 or something like that. Or is it even worse now? Denise, come on.
It adjusts a little bit. There are some tests that we must provide our students at the high school level because they are required by federal government. And then there are tests that we provide to our students that the state of Ohio mandates. So we have every student beginning in grade 3 must be assessed annually with reading and math. So their English language arts and their math, every grade level. And then there is a sprinkling in of science at grades 5 and 8. And the 4 and 6 social studies have come off. So that was a piece that the state of Ohio has recognized that the federal government was not mandating. And so they did relax on those pieces. But we do still have 7 end of course tests that students at the high school level must take.
Based on our state, not federal guidelines.
There's both
It's
involved
okay.
there. There's both.
Okay.
But we must need, all of our students have to be awarded the opportunity to take all of those tests. They
And
only need to show competency currently in ELA 2 and Algebra 1. So that's a little shift of, they used to have 18 points out of the 26 possible or whatever. So it's showing competency on 2 of those 7, but then those other tests come into play, as Abby mentioned, with those graduation seals.
Right.
So it does give our kids extra opportunity.
But it amazes me that talking about a level playing field and the voucher system, like Mr. Nally just brought up earlier, is that we want to be able to do all that, yet we can go 5 miles away from this school district and those kids don't have to take all the proficiency tests that our kids have to because they're not in public school. Is that correct?
I believe the assessments showing competency on those tests are tied to the graduation diploma, the state diploma. So if you want to graduate in the state of Ohio with a state diploma, you would have to have those assessments.
But a
and show
lot
competency.
less testing throughout their school career, though,
That is
compared
correct.
to if you were K through 12 at a public school, compared to a charter school, take any one of the 20 different categories of schools we have in this state, or homeschooling, especially homeschooling. Those kids don't, so again, now going back to the report and having to meet all that, but having kids on IEPs, well, there's got to be kids in these other schools or homeschooled that should be on an IEP also. But then again, if they don't have to take the same amount of tests, now all of a sudden our proficiency can be down, but it just, again, level playing field. That's all we ask.
And fortunately,
Examples.
the state is looking at some of that type of proficiency to those vouchered students. And I think that's a critical leveling of the field, like you were saying.
It's getting there. It just, in my
It
mind,
should
if
have
you're going
been
to
in
have
place.
a long time ago, I mean, if you're going to have a high school diploma from the state of Ohio, I don't care where you went or where you live or anything else, these are your requirements and it should be the same across the board. In my mind, it's pretty simple, but man, there's a whole lot of discrepancy there. But sorry, rabbit trail. Sorry, Abby. I took time away from you. It's all Sarah's fault.
I think though there's
Standard.
there's something to be said about testing kids grades 3 to 8 before high school, and I think that's good practice too. I'm not a test pusher. I'm a parent as well. I taught high school. And I don't think we should be testing kids all the time, but I think some practice tests, are okay.
Absolutely.
And
Yep.
that's how I address it in my own home, and that's how I've addressed it with different teams across our district. Is I know it's a lot of testing, but it's also some good practice for when they do. It's not the first time they're gonna, log in or get the paper test and be
Right.
like, "What is this? I've never seen this before." And like, "Oh, I've seen this, a few other times
Sure.
at least." So
Sure. Oh, and that's a great point.
Mhm.
Before they truly count at
When
the
it
high
matters,
school
yeah,
level,
they're not
when
stepping up to the
graduation
plate.
is on
Make
the
or break.
Right.
Yeah.
just on my last note, if you guys have questions or anything, feel free to, send Mr. Detweiler, Mrs. Hurt an email or, write them down and pass them along. I'd be more than happy to get them answered. But I also wanted to express that these reports that you get, you'll see a lot of like green, met, right? This is not my doing. We have teachers, therapists, counselors, principals, transition, coordinators, behavioral specialists, school psychologists. We have 3 people who enter EMIS data in that they get this from, and it's all their day-to-day work, especially our teachers and therapists in the trenches, doing this day in, day out. That these are why these reports look so good, is because of their hard work.
Thank you, Ms. Abernathy. Well done. All right. Just a couple other things. It's Monday, so here at Monday is here, our lunch pass out day. We have a new record of 610 meals passed out this morning between 11:30 and about 10 till 1 when they did run out today. So that's going well. It was like 570 last Monday, so we're up another 40 meals today. So
I got to say, just a note on that. So going in for a lifting session with some of the students today, I was there about noon. The staff that is out there, it is a fine machine
got her
as they're
down.
passing out.
They've
all
got her
that.
down.
I mean, they're bringing out that food on forklifts and sitting it there, and it's crazy. And you see the line, and when they say it's backed up to Kroger, I forgot it was Monday today. I turned off of Oak Harbor Road onto Cedar Street, and I'm like,
Uh-oh.
oh yeah, there it is. It's at the light at Dickinson, or at the stop sign at Dickinson. I'm like, why is it back though? It's Monday and it's meal day.
Yeah.
And I'm hitting it right when it's going. And it's a great service for our community, but the staff that are doing that, great job, because there's a lot of cars that they're servicing in that hour and a half or so. So,
And remember, every one of those is 10 meals. So that's 6,000 meals. You just kind of get your head around that. It's tremendous. So, quite an effort. All right. Did get over to Otis's today for summer school. The kids are at it. They're doing a great job. And I think they're having a good time. They actually had a little recess today and wasn't quite so hot. So they were actually having a little break. So things are going well there. That's kind of it. We're pretty good on our staffing. We anticipate, July 10 is a big day in public school. That's sort of the last day that by state law teachers can resign from a school district without us pushing back a little bit. We have some options to sort of say, no. We can say no. And it doesn't always work that way, but July 10 is kind of that get out of jail free card or leave the district without consequence day, I guess. So that's always a day we look forward to watch and make sure that everybody's fully staffed. So right now we're in pretty good shape. Got a couple things posted, but for the most part, and you'll see on our agenda tonight, we're in pretty good shape with that. So now we have a lot of meat here to approve, so we'll keep moving if that's all right, Mr. Price.
Yep.
All right, thank you so much. First of all, the good news, some donations. Kathleen Seaton gave us some rotating bookshelves to Atkinson, and Rural King for our No Kid Hungry programs. They've been supporting us with bags for our meal program.
all right. Can I get a motion to approve item 1, please? Motion by Mrs. Bloom. Could I have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Lewis. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Bloom? Yes. Ms. Lewis?
Yes.
Ms. Lehman?
Yes.
Mr. Nally?
Yes.
Mr. Price?
Yes, motion's approved.
All right, item 2 is the purchase of technology switches for $319,000. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of tech. And Corey schooled me up a little bit about those switches are really what connect everything to everything. So it's really how things are handled electronically in the district. Now it says E-rate dollars, about 80%. These actually we are phasing in all new from the construction project. So we were able to stagger that E-rate dollars. We only get so much E-rate money each year from the federal government. It's sort of the federal government's attempt to help schools stay up technologically, and we can use it to buy technology. So E-rate dollars are federal dollars, and we're using 80% of that will come out of those dollars for our switches. It is a lot, but we buy quality so that, because it's really the heart and soul of the system, and we've really learned that in the last few months. So that's item 2.
Okay.
Does that impact? I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Wait for discussion. Does that impact potential cyber type issues?
Well, I would say in the sense that we maintain a quality system and can operate it appropriately. Yes, there's nothing inherently about switches that are anti-terrorism.
Right.
But I think the fact that we are buying quality materials and setting up a quality system, yes, that we can manage and maintain safety would be a true statement.
Thank you.
Okay. Can I get a motion to approve item 2, please?
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Lehman. Could I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Nally. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Lehman?
Yes.
Mr. Nally?
Yes.
Mrs. Bloom? Yes. Ms. Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. Price?
Yes, motion's approved.
Thank you very much. Item 3 is our revised administrative compensation plan. And just so you know, we have, since I've been here, taken whatever the teachers have gotten through their negotiations and applied that same increase, whatever it is, to the administrative plan. Item 4 is the OPSI collective agreement. We did settle finally. We had nice negotiations with our OPSI team, and we believe we have a good 3-year plan with them. So with your approval, we'll get that official tonight. Item 5 is the personnel handbook for the non-unionized classified employees. And just so you know, anything that we negotiate with the union members, we simply apply to all those who are not union members. And we do have a few of those in the district. So, for example, some of our central office staff are not part of the union. We didn't want like a conflict of interest and, anyway. So we do have a few non-unionized, not as many. But any changes we make with OPSI, we simply pass those along to our non-union folks.
All right. Can I get a motion to approve items 3 through 5, please?
So moved.
Motion by Mrs. Bloom. Could I have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Lehman. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Bloom.
Yes.
Ms. Lehman.
Yes.
Ms. Lewis.
Yes.
Mr. Nally.
Yes.
Mr. Price.
Yes, motion's approved.
Thank you very much. Going into student and staff, we have item 6, which is the purchase of Algebra 1 and Geometry workbooks from McGraw-Hill. It's a general fund expenditure of $27,000, almost $28,000. Denise, I forgot to ask you, I meant today, and I apologize. Do you have an idea of a number on that? Did I stump you? Because I thought it'd probably be all
I would say all freshmen and all
right?
sophomores. So
Yeah.
it's
About
600 plus
okay.
books.
Thank you. And that's what I was going to guess. Thank you. So, and then item 7, Board of Education approves the student handbooks. And I've sent out some information about that. And I think this is a lot of Abby's work. She met with the principals, both secondary and elementary, to say, okay, what's new, what's not, what do we need to change, and forward that to you for your consideration tonight.
All right. Can I get a motion to approve items 6 and 7, please?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Nally. Could I have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Lewis. Any discussion?
I do have a
Yes.
question.
Okay.
Well, go ahead. Mr. Haley, go.
All right, let's go.
Oh, I talk too much. You go ahead.
I don't know. Well, my question is.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so it says for the total cost not to exceed the amount, and then it says for 1 year for use by Fremont City Schools. What does that mean?
Go ahead, Denise, if you don't mind.
They are workbooks, so they're consumable. So we allow the students, for the purpose of learning, to write in those books and use them. So it's a 1-year purchase.
Okay.
You might remember days of old where we would have the workbook and then you'd still have to get out your piece of binder paper to write
Right.
it all. We
Yeah, I
we
think
really
they did
find
that,
that
and
students
like
are
Xerox
engaged
it.
more when they can actually write in the material and
Okay.
use it, and teachers can use it in that capacity.
Okay.
My question was in the middle school, if I'm in the right, on the middle school handbook,
Okay.
it talks about deleting a couple courses, and one of them is financial literacy. I guess maybe I heard this information before, but why? Why are we deleting something that seems like we hear a lot of talk about, with
And we have state laws requiring it too at the same time. So
I'm confused.
it's the middle
by
school,
that.
high school thing.
Absolutely, I can answer that for you, Mr. Mr. Nally. At the middle school level, we used to have a set aside course such as that. We now have embedded that into a couple of our courses. So students get a little piece of that in 6th grade and a little piece of that in 7th and a little piece of that in 8th. So it's a little bit more continuation. It's not just one quarter or semester course. That requirement, that the legality that Mr. Detweiler is speaking to, is at the high school level. And so every student at the high school level must take that course. It's a graduation requirement sometime during their 4 years. And those financial literacy components we embedded into our Little Giant Pathway course. So they get a lot of information about personal finance, set aside dollars,
And budgeting.
budgeting, how to apply for a position, what does that look like, just a lot of those components to earn dollars, to spend dollars, to save dollars, and try to put all of those pieces together. So at the middle school, we eliminated the course. Really, it was just a cleanup. It has come out of our course description guide previously, and we really just missed it here at the handbook. So that's just a cleanup, but we are addressing those curricular issues with students.
I really like what you're saying there. And, you know, I think moving forward, we always need to continue to look at that and educate our community about maybe an article in the newsletter or something would be good. Because I don't think the community thinks we're teaching that kind of practical thing that, you know, we hear everybody talk about teaching to the test. And, you know, if there's that practical component, I think the community needs to hear that more. And maybe the newsletter or, you know, maybe something on the Facebook page. But
I would very much agree with you. I appreciate that suggestion. I will make sure I incorporate that. I remember a couple of years ago, we had a couple community members that came to us and said that they were so disappointed that Fremont City Schools did not offer any STEM classes. And I really needed to pause because we have entire departments at the middle school and the high school that offer amazing courses, but we don't call them STEM in their description or in their title. We have a robotics class for our 7th graders here at in middle school, and so that's very much a STEM course, but we don't label it as such, and so something gets missed sometimes in the translation. So I appreciate that.
And again, maybe if it's a newsletter article, maybe to kind of put some kind of explanation in there that says, you know, you might consider this a STEM program, or, you know, just maybe to, I don't know, I don't want to say it this way, but you kind of dummy it down so that everybody can see that it's not these big words, but it's a practical, you know, issue.
I will work to make those connections. Thank you.
Thanks.
We do a roll call on that?
We did
No,
not
not
do a
yet.
roll call.
Okay.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Nally,
Yes.
Ms. Lewis,
Yes.
Ms. Lehman, Mrs. Bloom,
Yes.
Ms. Lehman,
Yes.
Mr. Price.
Yes, motion approved.
All right, thank you very much. So here's team is our a walk-on number 8. We're just going to keep on going, but we have Carrie Wallach resigning as a band director for us. We'll miss her very much. We wish her well. She has been a great little giant and produced a quality product for us for years. So we will miss her very much, and we wish her well. Item 9 then, which is former 8, we'll kind of move up the ladder there. Got a couple appointments. Alexander Brewer will be custodian at Ross, and Josh Tullis will be custodian at Atkinson and Krogan. Josh also will be serving as a substitute for us as available. Top of the next page, we have appointments for Sydney Fortney, new music, elementary music teacher at Lutz and Atkinson, and Stephanie Osborne will be a school nurse at the middle school. Next item is extended days. Last time we brought on board Mr. Boss and Mr. Norris to be on our administrative team, and with your permission, we'd like to get them in a few days early so they feel comfortable August 1 when their contracts start. Little transition time is always pretty typical for especially those kind of positions that are 12-month positions, to kind of make sure we're ready to roll with your permission. And then item 12, which would be former 11, supplemental duty positions there at the top of page 6. We've got Kyle Caden and William LeGroux for varsity assistant football and tennis. Next item are some status changes. Holly Van Sina, step 1 to step 2, and Paula Shefflin will be taking over the office manager position vacated by Christine Smith. Next item, we got a couple catch up, and I think I prepped you for this. There'll be Science of Reading will be kind of an ongoing thing as we either hire someone or someone comes on board that hasn't trained yet. So that first group is Paige Warner, Abigail Dresser, and Ryan Norris. will be administrative, and that's $400. The next item is Stephanie Hastings. This will be reimbursed $400 for a non-ELA teacher. And then the top of the next page is Sydney Fortney as a new hire, science or reading, and she is in the heart of it at $1,200 because she'll be in an elementary group. So that's our personnel items this evening.
Can I have a motion to approve items 8 through 16, please?
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Lewis. Could I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Bloom. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Lewis,
Yes.
Mrs. Bloom,
Yes.
Ms. Lyman,
Yes.
Mr. Nally,
Yes.
Mr. Price.
Yes, motion's approved.
All right, last item for me. I'd like to point out we have a wrong date on the item number. See, it says 2526. That should say 2425. Apologize for that. It does say it in the body of the motion, but this is for our employee handbook. I talked to Mrs. King today, and she said that really just clean up a lot of edits about name changes, Denise's name, and also any policy changes that have happened over this last year that implied changes for managing our HR. So nothing substantive, but a few cleanups and some edits on that item. So with your approval, we'll get our employee handbook approved.
Can I have a motion to approve item 17, please?
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Lehman. Could I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Bloom. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Lyman,
Yes.
Mrs. Bloom, yes. Ms. Lewis,
Yes.
Mr. Nally,
Yes.
Mr. Price.
Yes, motion's approved.
Thank you very much.
Moving on to report of the treasurer.
Good evening. If you don't already know it, the last board meeting of the fiscal year is usually my show, and I was so sweet to share it with Abby tonight. As I don't know,
just that kind of girl.
such a sweetheart.
That's it.
I have 5 items on tonight. It's so that we can get all of our financial matters in order for the fiscal year-end closeout, which we're so excited for in my department. I always warn people not to walk back in the next 2 weeks. It's a little intense back there.
A lot of pressure.
Yeah. So I'm just kind of going to go over the May forecast or the financial report forecast, dear Lord. Just kind of go over some things that highlight real quick. May's pretty much followed the forecast that I presented a couple meetings ago. State funding is up, interest is up. Casino revenue's down. And we've seen this pretty much ever since COVID. Casino revenue's been down. That's not anything out of the new. I'm not really shocked by that. There wasn't really any big changes with revenue overall. We were up 5%, which is always a nice thing. Expenses, you'll see we're running a little bit higher than normal. Medical insurance increases is the main driver there. And also just as a reminder, the last couple of years, ESSER has been a huge offset of general fund for us for salary and benefits, and we'll see that going away the next couple of years. So you'll see benefits and salaries going up quite a bit over the next couple of years. Electric is up, and I'm sure as many of you have seen that in your electric bill yourself. So we're seeing it here at the district as well. Even though we have these wonderful lights that you'll see when there's no motion, they turn off on us. Trying to be as efficient as
Right.
possible.
There you go.
Excess cost payments to other schools for special education was up $350,000 this year, which is quite a bit, but that's how that goes in that world, unfortunately. But overall, expenses are up only 4%, so we're ahead a little bit, so that's always nice.
I've been reading some things from around the state about the ESSER monies going out, and some districts are finding themselves in trouble because they added staff with a lot of that. And then you've got to, if you aren't disciplined you got to say goodbye to those folks if you don't have the general fund that's already in house to make sure it's happened. I think we've been really conscious, and I actually shout out to Megan in our meetings. We can't add staff because that's where people get in trouble, because you add staff, well, we got money from the government. Let's add all these positions to help kids. So we're already looking at maybe a fewer spaces and spots for some additional help next year that we just don't have the funding for. So we'll watch that very carefully. And I know Denise is all over that. So.
And just to piggyback on top of that, Denise and I have been working on grants these last couple of weeks, trying to clean up some stuff for year end. It's kind of funny, like ESSER's falling off, and now we have a couple of grants where we're seeing an increase in dollars. And it's like, I know it's based off of our numbers and our poverty and stuff like that, but in some of the areas where the state identifies we need help, so the grants come in higher. But it's just kind of funny that all of a sudden it'll be like, oh, your Title I amount has increased, and we're like, what? Where did? Okay, so it will, some of the costs that ESSER had been supporting, we are going to be able to offset with some other grant opportunities. So that will be nice for the general fund. But
we're hoping there's a bureaucrat somewhere who's connecting the dots there, that we've had this ESSER money, and maybe they give us a little help on what's our standard federal funds. So we'll see.
Because we're still seeing those effects in our classrooms of that COVID. So
That
hasn't gone away.
Can we get a little bit more explanation in regards to the special education open enrolling out dollars that are moving out?
So excess costs are they're actually now, well, it used to be catastrophic costs and other excess. So that's kiddos that require quite a bit additional services. Sometimes they go to another facility to be educated and that kind of thing. And if that parent opts to open and enroll their child for whatever reason into another school district, there's a whole process of them identifying that how much money they spent to educate that child, and then it comes back to us as the district that has been receiving funding, not for that student, but just that we were the home school. And then we do the same thing, but we just open enrollment out of Fremont is usually higher than open enrollment in. So we see a lot more money going out than coming in. Trying to think of
No,
anything.
that's fine. I guess, can we, in the near future here, can we see some numbers in terms of what that means in terms of enrolling out and enrolling in? Because I think, that could be, can tell us and tell you guys what that reflects. Does it reflect that people don't want our programs, or or that are we getting good numbers coming in that are requesting those services?
Mm-hmm.
So I guess I mean, as a board member, I'd kind of see what those numbers are.
Sure.
This would have been a few years ago when the whole uproar with Townsend School up in Castelia was going on.
Yeah.
And I remember, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, because it's back a few years, because this is back when they were having attendance issues and everything else.
It was a mess.
But one of the things that you guys reported to us as a board back then was, like, for instance, and I think it falls under that category, if we had a child here that was elementary age, went all the way through elementary school with us, we did testing on him, maybe was on an IEP, but was these services, and then parents decide to open and roll out to Townsend. Townsend was kind of a big school for pushing. All of a sudden, they would test these kids and they would be autistic or something crazy. And all of a sudden, whatever the cost of that extra service was over and above what we did, we had to pay as the home school, yet they're enrolled at their school. And it blew my mind that, am I right in that?
I'm getting the side eye from Miss Abernathy over there.
Is-
Yeah, there was some of that going on, over identification.
And I'm not saying that like a kid that open enrolls out to Clyde Public School is, I'm not saying Clyde is that way or anything. I just know that Townsend, and not to knock Townsend now because I know it's under different leadership and everything else, but it's things like that that can happen that blew my mind, that why are we on the hook for that when that kid was never diagnosed or tested or treated with that particular problem. And then all of a sudden, oh yeah, by the way, and then we're on the hook for paying that for however long they're still at it. It's just,
That was a thing.
yeah, it's crazy to me.
And we don't really participate in that decision if they're open enrolling.
Supposed to.
May I answer?
Guys, please.
If a student is open enrolled, the district of service is required to invite the district of residence because all the due process rights come back onto us regardless. Meaning if they don't follow the rules or whatever, it's our responsibility. If you're enrolled at a community school like Townsend, you're unenrolled from us and we have no say. So if you're open enrolled, then we invite other districts. I say, Google Meet is a pretty great thing now. We can send a lot more IEP meetings than what we used to, or ETR meetings as well. And we do that. We have Paige Warner, who typically takes care of that for us, for all of our open enrolled out kids. That also includes like court placed as well.
But it's only required to invite the other school district if it's another public school.
Right.
But a community school or some other doesn't have to invite the home school district to be a part of any of that.
They're fully enrolled in that school.
But the cost still comes back to us. Sometimes.
I can't speak to the cost, so.
I mean, we've
It
had
has to-
instances where it has. I should say that.
It has to meet a threshold. It's pretty significant, but then that does get billed back to us.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, and then item 19 and 20, they kind of go hand in hand. I probably should have flip-flopped them on here. Item 20 is our year-end appropriations for fiscal year 24, and that's the colored teeny tiny print handout that I gave you. And that's just our year-end to make sure that what we spent in June, we had appropriated for in our system to clean everything up. And then item 19 is setting a permanent appropriations at 100% of fiscal 24 expenses. And it says see handout, but again, it's the same handout just because it's the same information. And then the other handout that I for tonight is our fund-to-fund transfers that we put on our 5-year forecast. And it was $1.5 million to our new capital project funds and our termination benefits fund. We're going to do $1 million from general fund to capital projects and $500,000 to our termination benefits fund. The capital projects fund we haven't had to use yet, but the termination benefits fund has been really nice to have set aside for all the retirements that we've had coming up and will be coming up soon. Some of those long-term teachers and I shouldn't just say teachers, also support staff and administrators that have racked up, their max amount of severance days, and haven't taken a sick day in 40 years or, have really been here almost all day, every day. Those can get some high dollar amounts. So it is nice to have that money sitting off to the side. With you see a high influx every time SDRS is about ready to change or changes retirement requirements. So when I'm looking at it, seeing $500,000 is going to hit a payroll, it's nice to not have to have it all come out of general fund. We've saved up for it in that termination of benefits fund. So that is a very nice thing. And if we ever get in a bind, we can easily do a fund-to-fund transfer back from either one of these funds if we needed that money in general fund. Just kind of a general reminder.
It doesn't have to stay in those funds. We can move it back to general
Yep.
fund without.
Yep.
Okay.
So it's almost just like a savings account for us. But we also have uses, like I said, that termination benefits fund is very helpful when we go to do those retirement severance payouts that can rack up quite a bit when you have quite a few people retiring at once. And then item 22, this is we had training last year where we found out we had to have board approval for us to have our federal grants that we utilize very heavily in the district. So we want to make sure we get that on there every year so that we can have access to use those grants that we are very fortunate to have.
Can I get a motion to approve items 18 through 22, please?
So move.
Motion by Mr. Nally. Could I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Bloom. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Nally,
Yes.
Mrs. Bloom. Yes. Ms. Lehman,
Yes.
Ms. Lewis,
Yes.
Mr. Price.
Yes, motion's approved. Okay, moving on to board member communications. Don.
Just wanted to mention I received, while I was on vacation last week, information from Gateway. Drawing a blank on Cajun's company,
Golden Gate.
Golden Gate.
Regarding possible performance evaluation system, mainly for the treasurer and the superintendent, and just hopefully it's something that will allow us to get on a good cycle and evaluate the things we want to evaluate. And it's computer based. And so I just received that, and I was going to ask him to send that out to the rest of the board to look at, to get some thoughts, and probably have some kind of committee meeting where we can talk about that system. Also, I saw the phone related article in the newsletter. Can you talk a little bit more about how that's evolved? And
Help me, Don. I'm sorry. I don't know if I know which one you mean.
it just came out regards to the pockets.
Oh, yeah. You're talking about the cell phone use during school.
How does that affect?
Yeah.
We have to go with
Right.
policy.
So there are districts that have done that. You know, the governor they said no. Well, no, he said we have to have a policy. A year from now, we have to have a policy from the board about cell phone use by students in school. And there are some districts that are purchasing. It's basically a pouch that cuts off all contact to that phone, and the kids put that in the beginning of the day, and it's not usable for the entire day. One way that districts are going to meet that requirement. Now, as I understand it, it's not mandated that we say no phones at all. We have to have a policy. And I think luckily, especially in middle school, we do have a policy. Kids don't have them during the day at all. And I think it's actually works pretty well for our middle school. So I don't anticipate any fight there. I think the high school will be a different challenge. And the board's going to really philosophically come up with where you guys think you'd like the district to be. And I think the conversations with other Fremont citizens and parents and it's going to be a very big part of that conversation going forward.
So the pouches are being implemented in what grades?
The article I read was a high school that bought a pouch for every child, and they could carry the phone with them. But when that pouch when the phone is in the pouch, it actually cuts off communication. So it's like a lead pouch. I don't know if it's lead, but I mean, there's something about that keeps that phone from being active. So that was just one way that schools could manage. Because, you know, it's always been a challenge. Even as a classroom teacher, once you take that child's property, is then it's yours. And if something happens to that property while you're holding it, it gets messy fast with parents. So it's really something to think about. You know, I know there are teachers even now that have the pouches on the door when they come in. The kids put the pouch like a little mail slot, right? And all the kids put it in there. That's one way to do it, so that when they're in their seats, they don't have access to their phones. Well, that comes with some issues too. Then it's away from them as their property, or it's buzzing during class. I mean, it's just still a bit of a challenge.
Somebody else could take somebody else's phone.
Exactly. So as you're walking out, I got the wrong one, and then it's a real mess. So that challenge of a child giving it to us is risky, because then we're assuming some
liability.
Absolutely. So there's just a lot of things to consider. And I don't know, Don, if I'm hitting the.
So I'm talking about this article.
Oh, okay.
It says phone use at Fremont Ross.
Okay.
And it talks about using the pouches.
Okay.
So I guess that
I'm sorry. I went a whole different direction on you.
Yeah. So my question is that being implemented at the high school now?
It probably not consistently. Is that probably true, Denise? I think classroom by classroom, probably teachers are collecting them or not collecting them, and it's probably pretty inconsistent. So it's happening in some classes, but not all.
Okay.
And right now, kids have them in between classes. They have them at lunch, on their off time, and then really it's been up to the classroom teacher to allow them to be used.
So over the course of this coming year, we'll be able to see how you guys
what's happening, right?
Set up some type of an evaluation system so that we can come up with a good policy.
Like, what kind of issues are we having, and
Sure.
what kind of things are going on that the phones are distracting from?
I guess I was under the impression that
Kinda had it under
things were
control.
going okay with phone usage at the high school, and it seemed like something like this was going to be more restrictive. So I guess that's where I was a bit confused.
Yeah. So I think, like you said, an ongoing conversation about what we want to do and how we want to do it. Yeah, for sure. And I anticipate conversations with staff and principals and teachers to make sure we.
And what you were saying ties into this
Okay.
article. I was just being more specific.
Got
to
it. I'm sorry.
the
Yeah, I
Ross
misunderstood.
article. I'm sorry.
Okay.
And then, when Abby was giving her report, I appreciated all the information, and kind of seeing where we're working toward. And I guess what I liked that she was doing, that I've seen you, Mr. Detweiler, and Mrs. Hurt do over the course of time, is making sure you're recognizing the staff that are doing that hard work. And that's very impressive for our school system. The final thing is, I used the word earlier, dummy down. I guess I'm just using that more as I don't want people to be offended. What I'm trying to say is sometimes we throw big words out there that I know I don't understand.
Right.
And so sometimes we have to make it more easily understandable.
Absolutely.
So that's all I had. Okay. Sarah?
Just a couple of things. Mrs. Wallach will definitely be missed. As a parent of a band child, when I advised my own child that, she was going on, there was an immediate text thread started with lots of sad faces, and having been able to watch her in motion. My daughter will be a freshman, so we had all of our middle school years. Just the time that she took with the kids, even at concerts, and talking with parents afterward, and just all the things, the thankless work that goes on in the music department. She'll definitely be missed, and we wish her well. And it's always nice to have one of your own here in the system. So we will definitely miss her. Thank you to all the volunteers and staff for all of the things that are happening this summer. I will probably say that every meeting, just because there are so many awesome things happening with the meals and summer school and Mr. Walker's program and just all the neat things that kids can be involved with and families can be reached. Hats off to our district for the things that we do and provide for our kiddos over the summer. And then with that said, there's lots of things in the community for our kiddos to be involved in. The rec center, I think, has longer pool hours this year than they have. Burchard Library has some neat programs going on. The Presidential Center has some really neat things happening. Our new amphitheater downtown. I feel like there's something there every day for people of all ages to enjoy. So I know we're on summer break and kiddos are really good for saying, oh, there's nothing to do, but there's lots of things to do and to get in some good trouble over the summer. That's all.
Laura?
Abby, I want to thank you for the presentation you gave us. I appreciate learning all that nice stuff that you presented. I hope the kids and the teachers are having a nice, relaxing summer and getting geared up for the school year that's approaching very quickly. And I just want to say to Carrie, thank you for all the years that you put in here. I'm happy for you that you're, going to be in Findlay and closer to home, but both my boys were in French Horn, and they just really looked up to her, and I don't know, they always had good things to say about you. You're a funny character for them, so I don't know, they just appreciate you. So it kind of put on my heartstrings a little knowing that she's going there, but it's a good thing. So I'm happy for you too, but thank you for everything you did for my boys and for the other kids in the school district.
Lori?
Thank you, Abby. Very informative. And thank you, Megan, for your presentation and keeping us up on what's going on. And to all the kids in the school during the summer, have a good time. And I know my grandson's having a great time. He's swimming and running around with his cousins, so they're all hanging out at their grandma's house. And just thank you for all the donations. And my kids didn't take band. They just didn't. They did piano, and you can't push that on a field. So that'd be tough. But I know that that teacher's going to be missed. From the sounds of it, was very, very well liked, and it's really going to be missed. So just wish her all the luck in what she's doing in her new endeavors. So that's it.
Okay. Thank you to the community for their donations again. Abby, thanks for all the information on the world of special ed. Man, that's not even the tip of the iceberg, what you brought to us tonight. So, and I think because you're moving on to assistant superintendent, Mr. Boss is coming in. I think the one thing over the years that I've been a part of the school board is everyone in the administration works together so well and communicates well to each other. So I think, we're losing a great superintendent, but that transition going forward with Denise taking the helm and Abby moving there and Mr. Boss coming in, I don't think we're going to miss. I mean, different, yes, but we're not going to miss a beat when it comes to the core of what we need to do is educate kids, because I think administratively everybody communicates so well together. It's pretty cool to see how it works and how seamless it can be, even though there's a lot of work that is put in by a ton of people that no one ever sees. But it's great to be a part of a district like that. For the staff over the summer, the school or the food program, all the custodians doing all the extra cleaning over the summer, kids and teachers are sometimes at home with not a lot to do in the summertime. Man, some of the staff, this is the hardest time of year right now. So, I had a chance to talk to Tony Walker today. I happened to see him at the high school. We got to talking about his summer program. I was over at the high school one day, and all of a sudden, big group of kids, and they're all on their electric bikes driving around the high school parking lot. which was great. And I told him that, and he's like, I hope nobody tried to hit you. And I said, no, they were great, but they put together electric bikes. And that's what they got to do. And that was only one project that they did. I mean, what a great program that he's doing, and anyone else that's helping him out in that. And then he was telling me that there's a STEM program starting up in July, I believe.
Okay.
And he's got pamphlets out there. I don't know if it's still open, if there's still availability for it. No. But some of the stuff that he said, they're going to be building electric bikes. They're going to be doing drone work. They're going to be doing all kinds of stuff. What a great way for these kids are over there in that summer program, and they're just smiling, having a good old time, which is great. And they're learning. So what a great program. So thanks to Tony. And also, Gina, if you're listening, I'm pretty sure everybody will be happy, really happy to have you back. We hope you're getting well. Get some healing time in there and everything, and then come back to help these guys out because they're in dire need of it.
We're
I think.
a mess.
So.
We're a mess.
With that, no reason for executive session tonight. So can I have a motion for adjournment, please?
So moved.
Motion by Miss Lewis. Could I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Bloom. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Lewis,
Yes.
Mrs. Bloom,
Yes.
Ms. Lehman,
Yeah.
Mr. Denali,
Yes.
Mr. Price.
Yes, motion's approved. Meeting's adjourned.